This was how the U.S. fixed the Great Depression in comparison to the Great Recession. When comparing the Great Depression to the Great Recession in economics, the Great Recession was solved similarly to how the government fixed the Great Depression. What caused the Great Recession? In 1992, Congress started passing affordable housing goals, and over the years continued to increase those goals. The banks were told to make an increasing percentage of their loans to buyers who could not normally qualify. Down payment requirements became easier and in many cases zero. Credit and employment history requirements became less strict, finally leading to the no-doc loan. In July 2006, U.S. home prices peaked. Real GDP fell 4.3% from its peak to its trough, the largest decline in the post-war era. The unemployment rate was at 5% in December 2007 when the Great Recession officially began.
The Great Recession 2007. The Federal Reserve response to the crisis evolved over time and took a number of non-traditional avenues.
Initially, the Fed employed traditional policy actions by reducing the federal funds rate from 5.25% in December 2007.
The Great Recession 2008. The Great Recession began in December 2007 and ended in June 2009, which makes it the longest recession since World War II. Beyond its duration, the Great Recession was notably severe in several aspects.
During this time, President George W. Bush signed the Economic Stimulus Act of 2008, which gave individuals a tax rebate and encouraged business investment. On October 8th, Bush signed into law an emergency bailout package that established the $700 billion Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP.
The stock market crash of 2008 occurred on September 29, 2008. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 777.68 points. That was the largest point drop in any single day in history. It plummeted because Congress rejected the bank bailout bill. On October 9, 2008, the stock market hit an all-time high with the Dow at 14,164. Great Recession 2009. President Obama, who often cited FDR, followed his example of targeting spending to interest groups by signing into law a $787 billion stimulus package that sent tax dollars to various sites and voting groups across the nation. That includes tax cuts and money for infrastructure, schools, healthcare, and green energy. In June, the recession officially ended after 18 months, making it the longest downturn in post-war history.
Now, what caused the Great Depression? During World War I, federal spending grew 3 times larger than tax collections. When the government cut back spending to balance the budget in 1920, a severe recession was the result. However, the war economy invested heavily in the manufacturing sector, and the next decade saw an explosion of productivity, although only for certain sectors of the economy.
A couple years later, a recession began in August, 2 months after the stock market crash. During this 2-month period, production will decline at an annual rate of 20%, wholesale prices at 7.5%, and personal income at 5%.
On October 24th, the stock market crash began. Investors call October 29th Black Tuesday, and losses for the month totaled $16 billion.
The Great Depression started on the 29th of October, 1929.
Great Depression 1930 to 1933. On June 17, 1930, Hoover signed into law the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, which suppressed trade and damaged American exports. He also signed a large tax increase into law in 1932 that halted entrepreneurship. This also caused the unemployment rate to climb from 3.2 to 8.7%. When Roosevelt was inaugurated, he began the first 100 days of extensive legislative activity. A third banking panic occurred in March, and Roosevelt declared a bank holiday and closed financial institutions to stop a run on banks.
FDR and his advisors, despite some early moves to cut spending and control the deficit that Hoover left behind, decided that ever larger federal spending would trigger economic expansion and pull the country out of its economic slump. Roosevelt began the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which paid farmers not to produce, and then expanded Hoover's Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which provided bailout money to large banks and corporations. The Great Depression used a lot of other New Deals as well to fix the economy during this time period.
Great Depression 1934 to 1939. Congress passed the Banking Act of 1935, the Emergency Relief Appropriation Act, the National Labor Relations Act, and the Social Security Act. They also created the Works Progress Administration, the National Labor Relations Board, and the Rural Electrification Administration. Economists attribute economic growth to heavy government spending that is somewhat deficient. Roosevelt, however, feared an unbalanced budget and cut spending for 1937. That summer, the nation plunged into another recession. Despite this, the yearly GDP rose to 5% and unemployment fell to 14.3%.
The Great Depression overall. The Great Depression was the worst economic crisis in U.S. history. During the Great Depression, Roosevelt raised both income and excise taxes. From 1931 to 1940, unemployment was always in double digits.
One outcome of the Great Depression was a collapse of world trade. The sharp decline was brought on by a round of tax increases on imported goods, instituted by any nations turning inward, trying to bolster their own sagging economies. In 1931, German industrial production increased more than 40%, 29% in Paris, and 14% in Britain, from 1929 levels.
Similarities between the Great Depression and the Great Recession and how they are both fixed. President Roosevelt and Obama responded similarly to the crises. They talked about balancing the federal budget, but they resorted to massive spending. In fact, the increase in federal debt under Obama and Roosevelt is very similar. The national debt more than doubled in Roosevelt's first two terms and was projected to double again in 8 to 10 years. Obama planned for higher taxes on products such as cigarettes, liquor, plane tickets, and soft drinks. This meant a spike in the capital gains tax, the income tax, and the estate tax. Obviously, it was harder to bring America out of a depression than a recession, which is why it took longer to fix, but similar methods were used for both problems.
And here is our works cited.